While most Americans are focusing on grocery prices, safety in their communities, and peace abroad, while internet sleuths today are focusing on the release of the JFK files, thousands of pages of documents have come out. While all that's going on, Democrat legislators have decided to focus on the issues that really matter, like exonerating witches. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Just when you think the women of the House Democrat caucus can't get any more absurd, can't degrade themselves any further, they make a Choose Your Fighter video. Also, we have the JFK files, huh? Is that exciting? Is that really big, huge news? I don't know. No one's read them. It's like tens of thousands of pages of documents. I don't know if they are, but I'll give you my prediction on the JFK files in a moment. First, want to tell you about Fast Growing Trees. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com. Use code Knowles. Did you know Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers? They have all the plants your yard needs, like fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Whatever plants you're interested in, Fast Growing Trees has you covered. Find the perfect fit for your climate and space. Plus, Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to get your dream yard. Order online and get your plants delivered directly to your door in just a few days without ever leaving home. Their Alive and Thrive guarantee ensures your plants arrive happy and healthy. And get support from trained plant experts on call to help you plan your landscape, choose the right plants, and more importantly, learn how to care for them. Whether you're seeking privacy, shade, or natural beauty for your yard, Fast Growing Trees has you covered. Their in-house experts are ready to help you make the perfect selection. No green thumb required. This spring, they have the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. Listeners get 15% off their first purchase when they use code Knowles. That is an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com. Code Knowles, Knowles. Now is the perfect time to plant. Use code Knowles to save. Today, offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. Folks, look at this beautiful box that you can go to thecandleclub.com/Michael and order today. It's the Smells and Bells candle. Comes in a beautiful box. I need to get a new Smells and Bells candle because I burned mine down because I use it just about every single day. Look at that, huh? It smells great right out the box. Save that box. And we're going to light it here with a nice Mayflower lighter. Oh, that's good. Like that. Not too bad. Not too bad at all, folks. Now, Smells and Bells candle, obviously, is to commemorate Lent, which is this penitential season in Christianity. Democrats, meanwhile, are focusing on their preferred religion, which is witchcraft. I'm not being hyperbolic or anything like that. This is really happening in an actual state house, resolution being put forward by a Democrat delegate, Heather A. Bagnall. She represents an area of Maryland of all places. It's supposed to be the Catholic colony. She represents part of Maryland north of Annapolis. She introduced a resolution in the Maryland General Assembly to exonerate women convicted of witchcraft and even just accused of witchcraft in the 17th century. Now, there's this idea that the libs put out there that in the 17th century and even prior, people were just going around just slaughtering witches left and right. That's not true. I think only one woman actually hanged for being a witch, though plenty of other women were accused of it. And this woman decides, with all of the issues facing America, all of the issues facing Maryland and her constituents, she's going to focus on passing a resolution to declare innocent, or at least to exalt and declare virtuous, all of these witches. This passed an initial committee hearing on March 10th. Even some of her fellow legislators have criticized her and said this is a complete waste of time and totally out of touch. She said, no, it's very important. And I actually tend to agree with the Democrat delegate here. There is a coherence, and a consistency to the explicit defense of witches, because her words, she's connecting witchcraft to abortion. She says that once Roe v. Wade was overruled, she knew that she had to exonerate these old witches, literal witches. Quote, I've got a real appetite for it. And the more I talk about it, the more people realize, no, this is serious. This is not just like a flight of fancy. it's relevant today. It's relevant today because she says abortion rights are under attack. In addition to that, she says that transgender rights are under attack and the whole DEI Democrat program. And this somehow relates to witches. And of course it relates to witches. We're talking about witchcraft, which is a pagan religion. And the modern version of witchcraft, Wicca and all the rest of it, is just a neo-pagan religion. And child sacrifice. And the same women who are most enthusiastic about slaughtering babies are the women who practice all sorts of weird witchy things. Some in a modest way, with horoscopes and crystals and all sorts of weird rituals and things. And some in a more overt way, like calling themselves witches. There is a modern witch here, Devin Hunter, who's weighed in on this campaign, says, part of the draw for us to witchcraft is the acceptance and celebration of our personal identities, bodies, bodily autonomy, a love of our planet, and in many cases, healing from past religious traumas. Religious traumas meaning they previously worshipped God. And that was traumatic for them because they weren't able to worship themselves. For example, many of us are women. Many are members of the LGBTQIA+ community. So to me, the effect of this campaign from the Democrats is less to exonerate the old witches than it is to indict the current witches. The current witches, namely the abortion supporters and the people who promote all of this crazy stuff. That's the effect. The effect of this to me is not to say, wow, can you believe back then people thought there was such a thing as witchcraft? The effect of this to me is to realize, oh, wow, there's witchcraft today. Because all this stuff, all this language, we hear about this in the mainstream culture. The mainstream libs say that what matters most to them is their personal identities, their bodies, their bodily autonomy, the love of the planet. Even that. Witchcraft involves a lot of nature worship. Well, modern leftism involves a lot of nature worship. Witchcraft involves a turning away from the worship of the one true God toward a worship of the self, trying to amass power for the self. Even if you say witchcraft is totally bunk and all these women are totally out of their minds, whether they lived in the 17th century or the 21st century, that's at least the premise of it. I am going to accrue power to myself to cast spells and control people and put hexes on people and control the world. That is the opposite of true religion, where in Christianity we say "Cupio dissolvi." It's no longer Christ I who live, but Christ who lives in me. You basically want to put the ego out of it and focus on God and have yourself be a reflection of God, not the other way around, not to make yourself into a God. That's what it is. That's what it always is. My takeaway on it is, oh, wow, golly, there really have been witches throughout history. Because I can see them today, women like this. Okay, speaking of old things, very old things, Tom Homan, the deportation czar under President Trump, has been shipping all sorts of people, and the judges have tried to stymie him. Democrat legislators have tried to stymie him. Bureaucrats have tried to stymie him. They're throwing all sorts of stuff at the book. So one way that the Trump administration was able to get around the impediments was to declare the cartels foreign terrorist organizations. Even that wasn't quite good enough. So another way to get around an Obama-appointed liberal judge who was trying to stop Trump from deporting Tren de Aragua Venezuelan criminals was to invoke the Alien Enemies Act. Now, this is a law from 1798. The Trump administration invokes it and ships the illegal aliens overseas. One reporter, furious about this, asks the border czar, or the deportation czar, Tom Homan, if it's really acceptable to invoke such an old law, and Homan gives the perfect answer.
You say to those who claim you're using a 200-year-old law to circumvent due process?
An old law? Not as old as the Constitution. We still pay attention to that, don't we?
But some would say this is...
How many more times do you plan on...
Hold up. Hey, you're just waiting for that 2016 era meme, like the spliff to come down, the stunner shades. Absolutely killer answer. And you know that Tom Homan was ready for that one. And it's a very good answer. That's what the libs are saying. Hold on. Why would you invoke an old law? Tom Homan says, it's not as old as the Constitution. We're supposed to defend that, aren't we? You people won't defend that. But I do. Of course. Just because a law is old doesn't mean it loses its force. Just because a law is old, it doesn't expire. It's not like a carton of eggs. And in fact, probably we would do much better as a country if we paid a little bit more attention to some of those old laws. In many ways, the older laws seemed to have a better grasp on real justice than these modern laws that that permit the killing of children. For old law, for most of American history, abortion was not permitted. It wasn't really a major public debate, but where it was a debate, it was not permitted. The old law didn't let you castrate little kids. The old law didn't let foreigners invade our country. The old law didn't discriminate against certain classes. Well, it did discriminate against certain classes for a while, but then we kind of tried to rectify that, and now we've got new laws that are further discriminating against all sorts of classes of people, but especially men and white people. And that's not good. Maybe we need to look back a little bit to the wisdom of the ages. I don't know. Maybe we'll look back to that Constitution. Now, I'm so excited to tell you about NetSuite. Go to netsuite.com/Knowles. Over 41,000 businesses have found a way to future-proof their operations with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP. Imagine having your accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR all seamlessly integrated into one fluid platform. That is NetSuite. With this unified business management suite, you are not just juggling numbers, you're wielding a powerful tool that gives you the visibility and control to make quick, informed decisions. It's like having a map in a maze of market uncertainties. You'll be closing your books in days, not weeks. At the Daily Wire, we are proud to partner with NetSuite because they are leading the way in future-proofing operations for businesses around the world. Whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite adapts to your needs, helping you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Now, speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/Knowles, Knowles. The guide is free to you at netsuite.com/Knowles. That is netsuite.com/KNOWLES. Go check it out today. Speaking of discriminating against classes of people and controversial Trump initiatives, I have got the perfect fake news story for you. Absolutely perfect. This is from NPR. Segregated facilities are no longer explicitly banned in federal contracts. Did you see this? This story was trending yesterday. And then the picture here is waiting room for colored only by order of the police department. Wow, what is Trump doing? What's the story here? After a recent change by the Trump administration, the federal government no longer explicitly prohibits contractors from having segregated restaurants, waiting rooms, and drinking fountains. Whoa! Trump's bringing back racial segregation? That's got to be pretty wild news to the 1 in 5 black guys who voted for him, an historic number for Republicans, and to the 46% of Hispanics who voted for him, and all sorts of racial minorities. Whoa! Why would Trump? I never thought he was a racist or anything. Why would Trump bring back segregation? Oh, because the story is just completely made up. Completely made. It's even more insidious than that. It's not completely made up. It's that it's totally deceptive. This was heard on All Things Considered, one of the premier NPR shows. How do you know it's totally contrived and deceptive? Because even if it is the case that President Trump is streamlining federal contracts, cutting out graft, cutting out abuse, cutting out corruption, even if they take out some line explicitly prohibiting the segregation of water fountains or something, most of these buildings don't even have water fountains anymore, I suspect. The way you know it's total bunk is that's already outlawed. You don't need a line in federal contracts to ban racial segregation. Racial segregation has been against the law, according to the Supreme Court, since 1954, since Brown versus Board of Education, which was explicitly ruling on segregation in schools, but which struck down the separate but equal doctrine that then was applied to all sorts of public accommodations. There was then the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title II and Title III, which prohibits racial segregation, separate but equal, different water fountains. So the news agencies, it'd be like saying that I have a contract for my cigar company, Mayflower Cigars. I signed some contract that says I own part of Mayflower Cigars. And there'd be a news story that could say, Mayflower Cigars in their contracts do not explicitly ban racial segregation. Do you know in the Mayflower cigar contract, they don't ban murder. that amazing headline news? Well, yeah, why would the contract talk about that? We already have laws about that. Why would some federal contractor documents mention something that's already been clarified by the Supreme Court in federal law? This is pure, all news in their focus on irrelevant details and on the stories they pick, and the stories they strike down. All establishment media have a little touch of the fake news, but this is really grade A stuff. Grade A. NPR gets the award this week for the fakest of the news. Now, speaking of major controversial initiatives of the Trump administration, Whoopi Goldberg just accidentally, I think, said the quiet part out loud. She stepped on a rhetorical rake that the Democrats broadly are stepping on when she observed that if President Trump can deport criminal aliens, if President Trump can deport these people who are breaking the law, then he can deport any one of them.
And you just got to keep your eyes open, y'all. Because if they can just come up and take somebody because they've made a decision that you're supposed to be that person, any one of us could find ourselves being deported to some country.
Don't give them any ideas, girl.
Well, listen, it is very clear to me that if we don't continue to say, listen, I understand you want to clean out all the bad stuff. I get it. But why do you now have access to my personal information? I get what the things you're trying to do. I don't understand why you're taking my stuff, not my personally, but each and every one of you.
And your constitutional
rights of free speech. Which, everybody says, you never let us say anything. We're, conservatives. And in fact, you're doing the same thing you are accusing everyone else of doing. And you're doing it in a way we've never seen before.
Okay, this is an amazing clip to me, and it really exemplifies the modern ethos of the Democrat Party. Nothing she said means anything. Nothing that Whoopi Goldberg said in that monologue, in that soliloquy, actually means anything. She opens up, she says, if Trump can deport criminal aliens, then he can deport any one of us. Or even let's give the most charitable reading we can. If Trump can deport, well, no, it's just talking about criminal aliens. But let's say we're not talking about the face tattoo guys. Let's say we're talking about that guy who was making a nuisance of himself at Columbia. Mahmoud Khalil, who's being deported for making a nuisance of himself, maybe committing crimes, but also just being broadly anti-American and leading the Palestine protests. Is Whoopi Goldberg a foreign citizen? Is Whoopi Goldberg not an American? I think she's an American citizen. I think all these women are American citizens. Trump can't deport you if you're a citizen. Trust me, it'd be nice if he could, but he can't. It's not going to happen. So that statement doesn't mean anything. If they can deport face-tattooed gangsters, they can deport anyone. That just isn't true. Then she says, why is the government getting all up in my personal information? And I assume what she's talking about, what she's alluding to, is Elon Musk and Doge going in and cleaning up corruption in the federal government, as many presidential administrations have done. And this crazy claim that Elon Musk now has access to our personal information, that the government broadly has access to our personal information. The government already has our personal information. If you pay your taxes, if you have a birth certificate, if you get a passport, if you have a driver's license, the government at various levels has your information. Furthermore, on the point of Elon Musk ran PayPal. 70% of American adults use PayPal. He's got your information. Him personally, from his private business, not even from the government. So what does that mean? The government, she doesn't want the government to have your personal information. Then she realizes that doesn't make sense. So she starts babbling about my personal stuff. Then she says she's losing constitutional rights. What constitutional right? She's saying foreigners are losing their constitutional rights. They don't even have constitutional rights because they're not American citizens. When we deport some foreigner who's here on a visa, we're not violating their rights. They have no right to be here. The visa is a privilege. So that doesn't make any sense. And then she says they're losing their right to free speech. But the liberals are the ones who rightly point out that even free speech has limits on it. And by the way, the illegal aliens and the people here who are on a guest visa and all the rest of the foreigners don't have the same constitutional rights that we do. And some absolute right to free speech, which even American citizens don't have. Nothing she said makes any sense at all. And I find this to be true with the left, usually, and especially right now, because the left right now is rudderless. The left has no leader. There is no leader to the Democrat Party. Who's the leader? Kamala? No. Obama? Not anymore. He might have been. Joe Biden, remember him? I'm not even joking. I kind of forgot about Joe Biden. Tim Walz, is he the leader? Gavin Newsom? There is no leader for the Democrats right now. And so they're even more ambiguous in what they're after than usual. But the left broadly, they don't make strong arguments. They don't make persuasive appeals to people. They just have kind of vague insinuations of corruption. But notice there, even in that long diatribe, she doesn't directly accuse Trump of anything with evidence. She's not talking about anything tangible. Democrats weren't talking about very much that was tangible. Other than abortion, they didn't really talk about anything tangible in the election. Maybe that's why they lost. One last point before I move on from The View, but this pertains to the problem of the Democrats not having any leadership. Chuck Schumer, Democrat leader in the Senate, just went on The View to take his lickings because he's come to a deal to continue to operate the government. A lot of left-wing Democrats are very upset with this. Here are the ladies of The View representing the Democrat base attack Schumer for caving to Trump.
And why?
Okay. So look, I knew it was a difficult choice, and I knew that I'd get a lot of criticism for my choice. But I felt as a leader I had to do it. Here's why. The CR bill was bad, no question. And it allowed a slush fund, which allowed money to be pushed around.
Explain it for the people who don't know what
There's
CR means.
CR means continue the government spending.
Right.
A shutdown, the alternative is cut off the government spending. The government shutdown works like this. All government spending is stopped, all. And then the executive branch, Trump, Musk, Doge, and this really evil man people don't know about, Vote, who's head of OMB, his name is Vote.
What's OMB? What does OMB mean?
OMB is the Office of Management Budget, which determines the spending. And they could cut off anything they want simply by saying it's not essential. And here's the second part that's maybe just as bad. There's no exit strategy. How do you get out of a shutdown? Guess who determines it? Trump, Musk, Doge. They're the only ones.
Say what you will about Chuck Schumer. He's a pretty smart guy. He's wrong about a lot of things, but he's pretty smart. He definitely raised the IQ in that room when he went on The View. And he's trying to explain, as if talking to children, to these hostesses of The View, why he, as the leader of the Democrats, was willing to take the political hit to agree with Trump and the Republicans in Congress on the continuing resolution. And he says, you think I did this because I thought people would be happy with me? No. You think I did this because I wanted to be yelled at for 2 weeks? No. But I had no alternative. I didn't have the cards. What Schumer is explaining here is what Trump explained to Zelensky in the Oval Office. He said, you don't have the cards. You do not have the cards. You are not in a position to be making the kind of demands that you're making. There is no way out. There's no way for you to enforce your will on Vladimir Putin. Schumer's saying that to the ladies of The View. He says, Democrats don't have any cards. So if we shut down the government, guess what we would be doing? We'd be giving more power to President Trump. And especially now that he's got Elon Musk in there trying to rip apart the corruption in the federal government, and especially in the executive branch, they would have a field day. We would be handing them a victory on a silver platter. And Chuck Schumer is totally right about that. But his own party can't understand it. His own party can't understand that they were totally routed in November. They lost the whole government. The Republicans have unified government, and furthermore, the Republicans have a mandate to govern. Trump campaigned on all this stuff with all these people, including Elon Musk, and he won the popular vote. And Chuck Schumer, say what you will about him, he's got a good political gut, he's a good political analyst, and he has to go on The View and explain to Democrats, guys, you don't understand. We lost everything. Now, when I want to talk to my friends, I generally don't go to The View, but sometimes I'll pick up the phone, and so I'm so happy I can use Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles. If you are with Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, you could be saving a fortune every month by switching to Pure Talk. That is Pure Talk, my cell phone company, cutting the fat from the wireless industry. For just $35 a month, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data with a hotspot, on America's most dependable 5G network. The average family of four saves over $1,000 a year when they switch to Pure Talk. Could you use $1,000 a year? I think everyone could. Plus, when you switch to Pure Talk's super low $35 plan this month, you will get 1 year of DailyWire Plus for free. Access to library of DailyWire Plus movies, series, and documentaries, including Lady Ballers, What is a Woman, Mr. Bircham, Run, Hide, Fight, and more. Uncensored ad-free daily shows, 1 year free of DW Kids, it's Bent Key, and a free Leftist Tears tumbler. The only way you're going to get it is by going to puretalk.com/Knowles. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles. Get a year of Daily Wire for free with qualifying plan. Pure Talk Wireless by Americans for Americans. You know I love a good debate. You know I love our panel discussions here. You know I love my long-form interview series, Michael and. One of the most requested debate topics that we've ever had was from the Red Pill Movement. The Red Pill Movement, which is anti-marriage and masculinist and anti-lady. So anyway, I sat down a little while ago with Pearl Davis to dive into this topic on Michael and. Check out this teaser.
But I'll see guys that take you guys' advice, and sometimes, it ruins their life.
What would men do if they begged you for advice?
Again, I'm not in the business of telling men what to do,
But I think you kind of are.
Well, what percent of women do you think are marriageable?
I think you're skirting the issue.
People are not going to return to marriage until you make the institution more fair.
Well, what they'll do is they'll return. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what I say. You guys have been preaching marriage for a decade.
Yeah.
And the rates of marriage have still been going down. Why? Because the cost is too high and the quality of women is too low. How do you fix it?
Do you want to get married?
The full episode is available now on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel and on my X channels, as well as, of course, Daily Wire Plus. Now, speaking of intelligent politicians, moving from Chuck Schumer, who's wrong about most things, to JD Vance, who is right about most things, JD Vance just gave a magnificent, concise explanation of why globalization is bad. Globalism, one of the hottest buzzwords of the last 10 years. Opposition to globalism being one of the clearest motivating factors behind President Trump's victory in 2016, some would say 2020, and 2024. I'm not getting into that, don't worry. Most people, though, can't quite explain why globalization is bad because they'll hear the usual objections. They'll say, well, look, actually, I know globalization, it upends communities and sometimes jobs are shipped overseas, but it's really great because we get cheap consumer goods and it's inevitable and the world is flat anyway and we got to keep up and there's no alternative and tariffs are bad and we just have to do it and it's really good and people should stop complaining about it. And the opponents of globalization, they kind of know at a gut level that globalization is bad. The mass migration has harmed their communities, the outsourcing of jobs, the destruction of America's industrial base. They know that those things are bad, but they can't quite articulate why. JD Vance provides the reasoning.
Because there were two conceits that our leadership class had when it came to globalization. The first is assuming that we can separate the making of things from the design of things. The idea of globalization was that rich countries would move further up the value chain while the poor countries made the simpler things. It turns out that the geographies that do the manufacturing get awfully good at the designing of things. There are network effects, as you all well understand. Cheap labor is fundamentally a crutch, and it's a crutch that inhibits innovation. Every country from Canada to the UK that imported large amounts of cheap labor, you've seen productivity stagnate. I'd say that globalization's hunger for cheap labor is a problem precisely because it's been bad for innovation.
Beautifully put, so articulate. He's just totally smacking down all of the arguments that the really smart globalists make. The really smart globalists, for decades now, have made the argument, look, we're not like some third world country. We've developed. And so we're going to just move up the food chain. And we're going to have those poor countries do all those tasks we don't want to do. It's just a macroeconomic version of explaining why we need an open border so that we can get Guatemalan peasants to pick our grapes for us. Well, Americans don't want to do those jobs. Americans don't want to manufacture anything. We can just have slaves in China do it. But don't worry, we won't lose our competitive edge because we're going to do the designing. We're going to call the shots. We're going to be running the companies. And we're just going to have the slaves in China make the widgets. And we'll keep it like that. But JD Vance says, no, hold on. Turns out that the companies that do the building also rather quickly get good at designing. And when we're talking about a country like China, China's going to get really good at designing really quickly because they're going to steal our intellectual property too. When you do business in China, you basically have to give the Chinese everything. And there's close coordination between the businesses in China and the Chinese Communist Party. So that doesn't really work. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. If we use the slave labor in China, okay, maybe they're going to get good at designing and American companies are going to have to compete after helping to build up these other industrial bases. But, at the very least, it's going to free up our time to innovate, right? And JD Vance says, actually, history doesn't bear that out. This is kind of a version of Nancy Pelosi explaining why they had to pass Obamacare. They had to pass this massive healthcare overhaul because then health insurance would no longer be tied to people's employment, which is an historical circumstance that came about because of a Democrat president, FDR, but that's a story for another time. And when your health insurance isn't tied to your employment, then you're freer to change jobs. You don't need to have any job at all. Man, you can be a poet. You can be a novelist. You can be a painter. She said things like this. And a lot of people believed it. They want to believe it. Oh, if I didn't have to work my 9 to 5, then I could write the great American novel. And the reality of it is, no, you won't. You won't write the great American novel. Most people are terrible poets. Most people probably shouldn't pick up a paintbrush. When you are freed of the basic circumstances of work, that doesn't mean you're going to innovate more. Actually, it means you're going to innovate less. JD Vance says, the countries that get addicted to the cheap labor, that doesn't free them up to create new products and imagine a new world. They just get kind of used to it and they get lazy and they get addicted. So that goes away too. And he says, so the reason that we've got to oppose globalization is not just because they took our jobs and it's all right and we want to build up the American middle class again. And all of those are good things. But he's actually hitting the globalist argument at its strength, not its weakness. The globalist argument saying, we have to be competitive. We need to innovate. We need to build the future. And JD Vance says, yeah, if you want to do that, you have to oppose globalization because the facts don't bear out your theory. This guy is freaking good. Man, this guy is good. And he's good in his own right, and he's really good as part of the Trump administration because Trump understands these problems intuitively. Trump has been on and off campaigning against globalization since the 1980s. Trump has been talking about how great tariffs are, and how great building up American industry is for decades. And he knows it intuitively. And sometimes he'll get into the details a little bit, especially when he's talking about trade deals, because that's a specialty of his. But often he's talking from the 30,000-foot view, the broad strokes. He's just got an amazing political gut, the best political gut I've ever seen. That's what Trump has. JD, I don't think understands these problems through his gut. JD has gone on an intellectual and political journey, and religious journey. He's a religious convert too. I don't think JD is primarily a gut politician. I think JD is a very smart, educated guy, very disciplined, who does the reading. I think JD has come to these conclusions through rigorous study. And those two go together really, really well. Because you've got President Trump, who just intuitively gets it in politics. He just has a sense of the right thing 99% of the time. And then JD Vance can come in there and fill in all the details and make all of the arguments. It's a very powerful team. And it's very helpful to have both of those. Not just both men, but both skills in politics. Now, I've said for a long time, JD Vance is part, a political leader who is changing our culture. But just as much, he is a sign of the times. JD Vance, a politician who is opposed to globalization, who wants to upend the economic and political and social orthodoxies of the past 30 years. JD Vance, who's a convert to Catholicism. JD Vance, who comes from Middle America, which he wants to rebuild again. He's a sign of the times. And we're getting more signs of the times, not just from Middle America, but from the coasts. A really, really good sign that I have predicted. You know how much I hate to say I told you so. We'll get to that in 1 second. First, though, America's on the comeback, but the culture war is not over. Tomorrow, we are releasing episode 2 of our 5-part series, The Case for Derek Chauvin, The Incident. In episode 1, we analyzed the criminal background of George Floyd and the professional record of Derek Chauvin. But tomorrow, we're going moment by moment through the infamous videos of that fateful day. If you want to be part of the movement fighting for truth and reason, it is time to become a Daily Wire Plus member. Stream my show ad-free with exclusive content you won't see anywhere else. Get unlimited access to premium entertainment. Collect with a community of thinkers, not followers. Watch anywhere, anytime, on the desktop, on your iPad, on the Daily Wire Plus app for mobile and TV. Join the fight at dailywire.com/subscribe. My favorite comment yesterday is from Adam Ne4TK, who says, Mr. Knowles, we have the same birthday. I am in excellent company. So I am in excellent company too. I'm so glad to hear that about your birthday. One day after St. Patty's Day, one day before St. Joseph's Day. Happy Feast of St. Joseph to everyone. It's good. It's good stuff. And now I'm officially middle-aged. You know, Dante begins the comedy when in the middle of our life's journey. And he's 34, about to turn 35. I am now 35, the middle of our life's journey, using the psalmist's understanding of a human life as 70 years. Middle-aged, man. Should I have a crisis? Should I buy a Corvette? Should I buy Professor Jacob's Camaro? I don't know, but it's all upon me now. Speaking of signs of the times, really good news. San Francisco Pride is going bankrupt. San Francisco Pride, the big pride parade in the most pro-pride LGBT LMNOP city in America, can't seem to raise any money. This is a new development. San Francisco Pride has never had a problem raising money. This is San Francisco. And yet, San Francisco Gate tells us, several longtime corporate sponsors of San Francisco's Pride celebrations are pulling their funding for the festivities, leaving Pride organizers searching for another way to raise $300,000. So we're not talking about a ton of money, all things considered, certainly not for corporate America. They can't even raise $300,000. In the past 4 weeks, the article goes on, multiple companies told San Francisco Pride, the nonprofit behind the annual Pride Parade, that they would not support the 2025 Pride celebrations. In their communications with San Francisco Pride, the sponsors all cited a lack of funds. That's convenient. Oh yeah, we just don't have any money anymore. But the article says none of them mentioned the political climate, but Ford noted that it was very abnormal for several multi-year sponsors to suddenly drop their support for the event. You know, I hate to say I told you so. I told you so. I called it. In fact, I called it on the Jubilee podcast. I sat down with 20 or 25 LGBT LMNOP activists. We debated all sorts of questions, not just the low-hanging fruit like the transgender issues, but I went further and I said that Pride should be banned. And most people think Pride should be banned because it's obscene. And every year we read about stories of weird naked guys jiggling in front of kids and people committing obscene acts and just taking over downtown with a bunch of gross degeneracy, and no one wants to see that. And I said, Pride Parade should be banned. And they all gasped. They clutched their pearls. I said, people want that. They want to ban it. Why? Why? People told me I was crazy, some far right-wing nut, because my view of these social issues was about the same as a Democrat would have thought 20 years ago. They said that's extreme, fascistic, radical, and yet now it's happening, even in San Francisco. The Pride Parade can't raise money. Why is that? I'll tell you why. How did I know? How did I get it so right? It's not because I'm Nostradamus. It's because ideas have momentum. That's how. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to predict that in the year of our Lord 2025, people aren't going to be that into Pride. But the Pride Parades are going to struggle. And it's not just the political climate of Donald Trump. That's what they're going to try to pin this on. Oh, it's Trump, a second coming of Generalissimo Franco, this authoritarian. No. Trump won the popular vote, okay? And Trump is not particularly authoritarian. He doesn't even seem all that particularly concerned with the social issues. He held up the rainbow flag when he ran in 2016. But people don't want this stuff anymore. They don't want the weird guys in leather smacking each other in front of kids on Main Street. They don't want it. There is a cultural movement away from that. The first part was when people turned against transing kids. That was it, transing kids. That you saw that flip the Commonwealth of Virginia red in the election of Glenn Youngkin. You saw that motivate, I think, a lot of the popular vote victory for President Trump. The Democrats had just gone too far. Transing the kids was too far. But when you start to pull on the thread of a bad idea, the whole heap of bad ideas that has constituted this movement starts to unravel, inevitably. So when you start pulling on the thread of why it's wrong to trans the kids, well, it's wrong to trans the kids because you can't really be the opposite sex. That's not really how human nature works. Okay, well then maybe we shouldn't trans the teenagers or even the adults then either. Because, keep pulling, because men and women really are different and the sexes are immutable and those differences are meaningful. Okay, well if men and women really are different, then maybe marriage doesn't make any sense because marriage is the union of a man and a woman. So if men and women are really different and one can't become the other, then you can't redefine marriage to be the union of two men or two women. Okay, we got to keep pulling on this. Then if men and women really are different and sex really does matter, sexual difference really does matter, then maybe all the weird pride parades, maybe that's just not something worth celebrating. I'm not saying we're going to, deport people who are a little light in the loafers, but maybe we don't need to center this in our society on Main Street. Maybe that's not a good idea. But hold on, we're going to keep pulling on that thread. If men and women really are different, then maybe feminism doesn't make sense because feminism says that women are basically just men who have been oppressed and have not been allowed to exercise their true virtues, which are masculine virtues, and anything men can do, women can do at least as well. But that obviously isn't true because men and women are different. So hold on. It all unravels. Now the question for us is, how far are things going to unravel for the left? Are we going to go all the way? The left got to go all the way in the other direction. The left got to go from recentering politics away from the community, away from man as a social creature, toward man as an individual, toward radical autonomy, toward feminism, LGBTism, redefining marriage, transgenderism, transing the kids. They got to take their idea all the way. The question for us is, do we get to unravel it all the way, or will there be another pendulum swing yet to come? What is not controversial, though, what is guaranteed, is that for right now at least, we are unraveling a lot of the sexual revolution. Hookups are down, is down. There are laws being passed in states against pornography. The LGBTism is not nearly as popular as it was 10 years ago. Feminism is kind of out. Trad wives are in. We're moving, okay? How far do we get before the pendulum turns again? That remains to be seen. Now, speaking of nonsense like pride parades, there's another fake news story that I have to cover. There's been a lot of fake news that you're probably hearing from your liberal aunt or something, and maybe you don't know how to respond to it. Here's a big one. Trump memo reveals plan to throw Social Security into chaos. I've heard this from liberal family members. They said, Michael Trump, he's going to destroy Social Security. Or Elon Musk, he's going to send Elon Musk to destroy our Social Security. Oh, this is really scary. Even from fairly moderate or even conservative people, some have fallen for this. This is totally dishonest. Yes, President Trump is going to reform federal programs. No question about it. Yes, Elon Musk, even when it comes to some of the entitlement programs, is cleaning up corruption because there are people who receive these federal benefits who don't deserve them, who don't even exist, perhaps. There is corruption in the government. Elon Musk is cleaning that up. So what has he done to throw Social Security into chaos? He just said you have to prove that you are who you are and you're entitled to these programs. That's it. It's as though it's just like when the Democrats say that Republicans don't want people to vote because they have to show an ID when they go to vote. No. Republicans are defending the vote and the integrity of the vote by making sure that actual voters are voting and thereby protecting the integrity of everybody's vote. Well, same thing for Social Security. The Democrats have been trying this line for 10 years on Trump. They've been using it against Republicans for many decades, sometimes effectively. They say, Trump wants to cut your Social Security. That is simply a lie. If Trump has been clear about one issue for his entire political career, it is that he does not want to touch your Social Security benefits. In fact, Trump has been so emphatic and consistent on this issue that he's gotten criticism from other Republicans who do want to cut your Social Security. This was an effective line when the Democrats lobbied it against people like Paul Ryan or Mitt Romney or the Republicans of the Tea Party era, who were focused on entitlement reform. It doesn't work on Trump. Totally dishonest on the one hand. And on the other hand, totally misunderstands the political moment. And this is the real key for the Democrats and their propagandists in the news media. If you think that scaremongering about mean old Republicans throwing Granny off a cliff is going to work, if you think that fear-mongering, the likes of which you see on the Democrat TV shows like The View, the kind of stories that you're getting from NPR and all that Trump is going to bring back segregation or whatever, if you think those are going to work, you are just misunderstanding the political moment. That might have worked 10 years ago. That might have worked with the old Republican coalition. Trump has built a new Republican coalition. Trump is making different arguments than Republicans were making 10 years ago. Trump has different priorities. Trump got elected by different people than the groups Republicans used to rely on when they were losing elections. Democrats haven't adapted to that. So they just sound like an outdated music or something. They haven't caught up. And until they catch up, they're going to have nothing valuable to offer voters. All they're going to do, here's a little tease, all they're going to do is just jiggle around on camera like the Democrat members, the female Democrat members of the House. We'll get to that really important news story tomorrow. But now I get to bring on a guest, not for you hoi polloi who are watching on the public channels, but for the crème de la crème on Daily Wire Plus, Lee Allen Baker. And we got a celebrity coming on the show. And many of you, the Zoomers out there, grew up watching this woman. We'll talk about the state of Disney, the state of Hollywood, what she's up to. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, KNWLES, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.